Hi, this is Bradley Sowash, jazz pianist and educator, and in this session you will learn to use call and response to inspire creative music making between a teacher and a student, between a musician and a musician, or for yourself as a solo improviser. So I'm going to start it out by just playing some examples of call and response, and then we'll work through some tips and tricks and various types of call and response. Just listen how this blues has a call and response. So I hope you can hear that I'm going back and forth there between a call and a response. To exaggerate that, I could change ranges. So even though I'm by myself, it has the sense that there is a call and response, two musicians playing, even though it's just the same hand. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through this in three parts. I'm going to talk a little bit about the roots and give some examples of where call and response shows up in music. The second part, I'll get into some of the types of call and response. And then I'll leave you with some tips about how to best teach or practice. Let's start it off with a little bit of background. I'd like to give some history, and I've been recently learning from students in my online jazz piano classes that are currently about Latin music, Latin jazz. They really enjoy hearing some of the background of these styles. So let's look at call and response. Just like so many things in popular music and jazz music and non-classical styles, they often start in Africa. And we're talking here about sub-Saharan Africa, and often specifically West Africa. So if we think about that, let's look at West Africa. Traditionally, of course, it's a dynamic living culture, but traditionally the music is participatory, democratic, meaning it's not all look up to the fabulous musician on stage and we're lowly audience members. Everybody is involved, and it's integrated in many aspects of daily life, traditionally, right? So you can do public discourse with music. It's certainly a part of religion, and it's just part of musical expression for its own sake. So I don't want to try to pretend that I have a deep steeping in African culture, but I'll just give a little bit of the sense of what might happen in a community setting. So here we have some agogo bells, which is an African instrument. And I'll just use hey. Oh, hey, 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 hey. Someone else says, I said, hey, 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 hey. And then, hey, ho. And then the chorus, oh, oh, oh. Now you notice in that case that the calls and responses are similar, but they aren't necessarily identical. That's sort of the nature of call and response. So let's acknowledge that the roots of this creative concept is Africa, particularly West Africa or Sub-Saharan Africa. And because of Atlantic slave trade, there is then that African diaspora. So we see this tradition popping up in America, where I live. It's also in Brazil, any place where the slave trade was unfortunately part of our history. Cuba, Caribbean cultures and places. So it shows up in work songs. And we'll look at that in a minute. So keeping the rhythm as you work, but also leading the work at hand, and also just passing the time. It shows up in worship, as I've mentioned, festivities, even children's rhymes. And eventually it finds its way into popular music. I just want to share a term with you, coro pregón. I hope I'm saying that right, coro pregón. And that is the Spanish word for call and response, coro pregón. And that would be in Latin music cultures, we would use that. In English, it means chorus proclamation. But the second word, pregon, actually is a street vendor's call. I have peaches for sale, and so that that calling out, that proclamation, chorus proclamation, is really more of like a yell or a spontaneous advertisement or comment. So it comes from Africa and then finds its way out to the diaspora through Atlantic slave trade. And then let's contrast that with Europe, where the call and response in what we think of as European music is, so classical music, folk songs, and so on are it's a little bit less prominent as a creative device, yet it's still there as well. So, for example, psalm singing, lining out the notes to help people learn psalms by ear. And then we have some folk music that has that back and forth. And we have antiphonal choral writing. Antiphonal means two choruses, one singing off the other. And of course, this was pioneered by Gabrieli because of the acoustics of where he was, writing for. I believe it was St. Mark's. And so one choir would sing this, and the other choir on the other side of the gallery would sing a kind of response. So it is present in a European culture. It's just less daily, I guess I would say. So those are the roots. Let me move on to the examples. Here's some examples of call and response that you're already familiar with. Some folk songs, as I mentioned, get into that. So you probably know, I'll give you one ho, says the soloist. And then the chorus says, green grow the rushes ho, what is your one ho? And then the soloist, one is one and all alone, and evermore shall be it so. I'll give you two ho. And the chorus comes in, green grow the rushes ho. So we have those back and forth songs. That's an example of call and response that you may be familiar with. Another one is worship. So we have Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. Let's see. There it is. So that's the chorus of Swing Low. But what happens next? Well, the soloist says, I looked over Jordan, and what did I see? And then the chorus says, coming for to carry me home. Right? I'm no singer, but you get the idea. A bunch of angels, I forget who it is, coming after me, coming for to carry me home, and then back to the chorus. So that back and forth comes, you see it in spirituals. Another one that comes to mind in some versions is Wade in the Water. So that, of course, is part of that diaspora. You also hear it in work songs. And some of them we know, even though they're imported, such as the Banana Boat song. Hey, Mr. Banana Man, telling me bananas. And then the chorus would sing, daylight coming and I want to go home. But hand to hand the soloist sings, daylight coming and I want to go home. So they have that soloist bouncing off the other workers. And even though we associate that song as a kind of a popular song that made its way onto Sesame Street and everything else with Harry Belafonte, its origins are as a Caribbean work song in a real life setting where we're loading a boat full of bananas. So let me just check in with some other people that stopped in here. Callie, thanks for coming by. Diane asked a question, which new RCM books are your pieces in? I'm thank you for bringing that up. I'm feeling very fortunate to have 3 of my pieces included in the Royal Conservatory of Music Celebration Series that's coming out in April, and I will let you know about which books are which. I just kind of got the news myself, so I'm getting on to that, and I'll let you know. I'll post that on Facebook. Thanks, Diana, for tuning in. Band of Angels, thank you. A bunch of angels, says Alice. Yes, sometimes we just do what we can. So I'm going to turn up my guitar here for this next one and just show you another example of call and response that you would recognize. And then we'll get down to how to actually do this ourselves. So let's see, something like, well, when I was a boy, just the age of 5, and then you improvise until you whatever. Did anybody tell me? Just go ahead and type it there. Who is this sound associated with? And then I sing something, so there's a call and response between the singer and the instrumental response. Could be harmonica or blues guitar. I woke up this morning, I thought I was dead. That kind of sound, that blues sound. Somebody type in the comments here who you think we're dealing with right now with that sound. Who really is associated with that lick? I know there's a bit of a delay, so I'm not seeing that pop up. So just let you know, it's Muddy Waters. So blues, Muddy Waters, that back and forth. I'll show you two more here. Let's look at rock and roll. And I've been practicing this to get ready for this. See if I can do this. I got to get the key in my head. You can recognize this call and response. Hey, mama said the way you move, gonna make you sweat, gonna make you groove. That's such a famous Led Zeppelin line, and there it is, the singer, wailing away, and then the guitar responding. And even though that's a white British band, they are definitely drawing on that African tradition of riffing as a response to a vocal line. And so let's look at a couple of jazz examples, and I'll show you some types that you can use. One of them is those parenthetical fills. I call them, the speaking in parentheses. So, when the saints go marching in, oh yeah, marching in. Those in-between fills that you can hear in jazz music, where there's the main line and there's a sort of a less important line. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. And the other thing that goes on in jazz is where we have that trading fours, often between musicians, but very commonly between a drummer and a band. So the band's playing and the drummer boom. Band. So let's get into some types of call and response. This is real meat of it, how you can use it and giving names to things. So the first one is a question and answer. And if we think about a question in language and body, we raise towards the end. Like, I wonder if it'll rain today? Eyebrow goes up, shoulders come up, and the voice kind of goes up. Rain today? Right? Are you going to eat all of those? Right? And then the response goes the other way. Yes, I'm going to eat all of those. It has a finality to it. And so just as an ear training exercise, you could practice this with just by noting out a line that has a ending note that is not tonic. It's deliberately any other note but the first degree of a scale. Or you could even goose it a little bit by making sure you end on a note of the 5/7 chord. So if I'm in the key of C, I'm going to end my call that I may be doing with a student or whatever and say, 4 measures, 4 beats, and then land on a D. So I'm in the key of C and I'll land on D because that's part of the G chord. So I could go, and the student might play something like this. Now notice that the student's part is different, or could be playing with yourself as well. This is a great way to organize solos. The student's part is different, yet the same. It has a finality, and it uses similar rhythms or maybe a similar shape, but it doesn't seek to copy it. That's different. So let's try another one. And the answer. And there's a million different answers that would be right, of course. So the first one is just question and answer. If you want to write that down, just ask a question which seems to be up in the air. Let's go on from question and answer to imitation. So imitation tries to do the exact thing, but not exact. In other words, when we imitate, we might copy some elements, but not all of them of a call. So some of the elements might be copy the exact pitches, or it could be catch the rhythm, or just the shape. It goes up and down, or it goes down and up. So let me just put a little groove here. Let's say the first musician goes, second musician. So just a little variation on that. But let's say the second musician makes a completely different note choice because they didn't really know what note it started on. That would be okay too. So here we go. So they caught the rhythm and the shape, but not the pitches, and that's okay. So when you play around with these games, you know, you don't have to be strict and say, no, that wasn't the exact pitch that I just played, you know. Just getting the idea, like a conversation. I'm feeling really crummy today. Oh, it sounds like you're feeling really crummy today. You know, that is that kind of similar yet personalized and coming from a different perspective that you might hear, I don't know, in a counseling session or something. So we've hit question and answer and imitation. The next one is taking turns. And by this I mean the caller and the responder switch roles. And you can do this around in a circle. I've had a lot of fun doing this with Suzuki violin students. So how it works is the musician 1 calls, musician 2 answers, and then take a little break if necessary, and then start a new call with musician 2. And musician 3 makes a response, answers that, and then they make a new call. So the first musician does this. And the second musician does this. Third musician. Third musician. Fourth musician. And then calls. So each person has the role to both respond and then make a new call. And of course, this is a great springboard for getting the creative gears turning. And you see, when you do this in a group, some students are just, whatever, I'll just wing it. And others are going, they're trying to like quickly compose the piece. So when it gets to them, they're having a good one. And then sometimes this happens, just so you know. You have the show-offs. So then we have that much time, and the show-off does this. And it stops the whole band. Like, what? Okay, so you know a blues scale, but you just totally made your own time up and you lost the beat. So that's why it's good to do that with a little drum or something to keep everybody honest and keep the beat going along. Kind of point, it's your turn, it's your turn, it's your turn. So the next one is parenthetical. I talked about that a minute ago, but I wanted to tell you how I did that with my dad. Growing up, we used to sit in the back of the car and he would make funny jokes while my mom sang. My mom would sing, "Oh, when the saints..." And my dad would make jokes. "Oh, when the saints," says my mom. And he'd go, "Well, maybe they're not saints. Go marching in. Well, what if they were walking in?" And we would just crack up in the back seat. So they're not the main point. They're those side comments that I touched on earlier. And you can, play that way if you're soloing. So that you have that main point and then a not so main point. Then if you can organize the architecture in your head that way, then you have some logical soloing. The other thing is to pick up the last few notes that someone played in a long solo. You hear this a lot in jazz. So let's say we have this is the first soloist. Second soloist. So they grabbed that last lick from the first soloist and worked with it a little bit as a springboard into their own creative exploration. Take what you'd heard and just put some more with it. And the last one is architectural, I call it. It's a proportion of 2 + 2 = 4. And you could do this as you organize your own solos. Basically, you ask a question. Ask the question a little differently and then give your own answer. So let's say here's my question. And here is my enhanced question. And here's my long answer, which I'll make up on the fly. So here, question 1. Question 2. So the idea is you have a short question, a short answer. Sorry, a short question, same question again, and then a longer answer. Let's do that again with a different groove. So you heard a da-da-da-da-da question, da-da-da-da, yeah, a little bit different, and then a long answer. That could be just a nice way to organize your solos in a kind of calling and response or question and answer way. Okay, we have hit call and response by giving its roots and examples, and we've talked about some types of call and response. And I just want to let you know, before we go on to the final tips, that if you want to watch old improv tips of the month or past ones, people keep asking me about that, you can dig around on my Facebook page, Bradley Sowash Music, and find them, but it's easier to find what you want on my blog. And so at the top of the BradleySowash.com website is a place that says Improv Tips Blog. If you click on that, you can watch some of these replays of these improv tips of the month, which I so appreciate you being with me here live for. And then sometimes I give music examples. I also have them posted on my YouTube channel. So if you missed some and you'd like to catch up on more improv tips, that's how you're going to do it. So let's move into the third section, just some tips, and we'll get you on your way today. If you're teaching this or working with the idea of call and response in your own music making, the first thing is tempo. Just choose a nice conversational tempo. You know, just like you would say, oh, I'm going to the school. It's not, you know. So make sure you're very medium, I guess. And I like to say very medium. I think that's funny, kind of oxymoronic. The other thing is, if people are reluctant, you can start with pitchless. So 2, 3, 4, ba da 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 da. Next person, da 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 da. And perhaps adding nonsense syllables. I did that because I wasn't sure if the clap would carry through the microphone. You could also accompany it just to keep things going. It's nice to play a little drum, or you can just do something as simple as octaves. Just like that, you know, just C's. And earlier I was playing a nice one that works well, A minor, G, A minor. Open fifths, A and E, G and D. And then another pattern is just to play D minor 7, G7. That can just be a nice white key. D minor 7, G7. With any kind of stylistic, left hand that you like. It could be Latin or walking bass or just octaves. And then heart and soul chords. C, A minor, D minor 7, G7, C, A minor 7, D minor 7, G7. That can make a nice basis for improvising in a call and response setting. Another tip is, if people are reluctant or you yourself are stuck, use word prompts. So you could say, Mama, may I have some apple pie? Some apple pie. No, you can't. Whatever. So sometimes using words as a way to get your call going can be helpful, just borrowing from language. Another tip is to limit your notes. Just say, to keep it simple, that we're just going to use these three notes, C, D, and E, maybe to start with a reluctant improviser. Or you could use the pentatonic scale, C, D, E, G, A, the C major pentatonic scale, or the A minor pentatonic scale, same notes in a different order, A, C, D, E, G, A, which I was using before. That can be very freeing. Maybe you're familiar with blues scales. Anyway, you just limit your notes. And then loosen it up. So responses do not have to match. If you're teaching or you're working with yourself, don't be so hard on yourself. If it's just catching the rhythm or some of the shape, be good with that. We don't want to be creativity killers. Lastly, you could just use different sounds. So I'll select here a flute and a bass. That can emphasize the back and forthness. So there I went from flute to bass in that example to emphasize the different voices. And that can be a good way in your own practice, even though ultimately you'll play the same instruments such as piano, can help you separate the voices. So that's what I have today. If you're watching this as a replay on YouTube, I'll ask you to hit the subscribe button so you can also find out about my new improv tips posted there. And I'll just say, until next time, enjoy your creative music making journey.